Greetings and salutations everyone, this is of course Sugi Shogun here, and today I'm gonna be reviewing quite a controversial anime title from recent times, and that is none other than Platinum End, which was created by Obata Takashi and Oba Tsugumi, who were the creators of Bakuman and obviously more known from their bigger title, Death Note. So when the initial anime trailers came out, and it was obviously marketed as from the creators of Death Note, obviously a lot of people were very hyped and started to kind of like, hype the show. And when the initial first episode aired, basically everyone went 180 and, started to dislike the show very, very much because it was not quite what they had expected. So there was very unrealistic expectations regarding the show and what type of quality it would be. And the thing I don't like about this type of thinking is that just because an artist or a writer or a movie director creates a one single piece that is, like a great movie or something, it doesn't mean that they are able to replicate that process over and over again. And sometimes even these great, filmmakers are only able to create like a one really, really good film, and everything that they produce afterwards is average or maybe even below average. So just because there's some star material behind certain manga or anime just doesn't mean that it's going to be amazing. Now, let's break down a bit about the premise of this story. What exactly is Platinum End about? So it takes place in Tokyo. Our main character is known as Mirai Kakehashi. Mirai obviously stands for future, so there's a bit of irony with that name. And he has been in life of pain and despair ever since he lost his family on an explosion. He is now enduring abuse from the hands of his relatives that basically took him in after his, family died. And he is, steadily, falling into deeper depression. And now he is basically ready to die. And he's planning to suicide with very Japanese fashion by jumping off from a building. Now, before he is basically able to jump, this angel appears in a sort of like a trance moment. And this is a guardian angel known as Nasse, and basically convinces Mirai to live on, and she will be granting Mirai with these two priceless abilities. So basically give out these arrows that he can shoot. He has a red arrow which can basically, make a person fall in love with you for 33 days, and basically you can command them around and they will basically do anything you say. And then also a silver arrow that can basically kill anyone. And normal people are not able to see these arrows. And also top of that, you also get angel wings, which allow you to fly at a very, very fast speed. And none of these are basically seen by normal people. But it turns out that Mirai is kind of in store for something a bit more bigger, since Nasse basically informs that there's going to be the showdown between 12 other individuals who also have been given the status of a god candidate to become the next god of the world. So basically, there's going to be a form of a battle royale of sorts, unless there's not going to be a mutual agreement who will become the next god. So that is kind of like the premise of this series. In a lot of ways, it's somewhat toying around with similar things as in Death Note, with death, suicides, and, megalomaniac personalities, and, ruling the world and things like that. So it's a psychological type of a show, supernatural, and maybe it's not as much of a thriller as Death Note is, because Death Note really revolves around Yagami kind of like trying to hide and, cover his tracks from the police and trying to make it so that he will not be, seen and everything like that. So there's a bit more thriller aspect in Death Note compared to Platinum End. But in a lot of ways, when we look into the writing of Oba Tsugumi, we can clearly see that there are strong plot twists that you don't expect to happen on Platinum End, and a lot of mind games that are also happening, and both of these elements existed in Death Note. So in case you enjoyed those types of elements in Death Note, you're definitely going to be enjoying them in Platinum End too. So in terms of writing and the story development and things like that, it's pretty much on the same level, outside from the ending, which we're going to be talking about a bit later. Now, it's not a perfect show, obviously, because it has a pretty bad ratings right now, and we're gonna kind of open on that, why exactly that is. Now, the series also does a lot of good job about like talking about suicide and the suicide culture in Japan in general, and that might be something that certain people may have missed because they don't understand, you know, those types of things that are going around on Japan, which has very high suicide rates. I want to say it's the highest in Asia, maybe highest in the world, or top 5 highest. And it's a problem in Japanese society. So there's a lot of this very rich social commentary regarding about suicides. And later parts of the anime, there is talks about like atheism versus God, and you know, there are deep subjects which are touched upon on this anime, like it was in Death Note to an extent. So I think it is very rich in detail. It's not just a random battle royale, and it's just, there is, you know, context, and there is, you know, substance inside Platinum End 100%. Now there are some problems, and let's talk about a bit of those. So number one is the series was animated by Signal MD, which is, I don't even know what they have worked on before. Not to say that the animation was terrible or anything. There were a couple of shots which kind of looked unlively. I guess I would be using that word. But also the Death Note, when you look past to it, obviously it's very old anime, but the fact of the matter is it had a very good studio behind it making it, and it had these very amazing, you know, there's that like almost a 360 zoom out when light is basically riding on the papers. There's a lot of these iconic like angles, and the cinematographic style of Death Note was really on a very high level. It's not something that exists on Platinum End, sadly. But also, when we look at Death Note, back in that time as well, there were a lot more darker tones used in anime. I would argue that things today are a lot more brighter in contrast and like brightness scale. Like things are just a lot more brighter than using a more darker tones and tunes in the drawings. So I felt like the series was quite too bright, and when you look at it from an artistical point of view, it may not seem or look like something of a thriller or you know, series about suicide. So maybe the art style was maybe too positive or artsy in a bright way compared to what the series was exactly about. But I could also say Madoka Magica also was kind of like very bright, but it was also like very deep in some aspects, and that's something that the Japanese sometimes, you know, and Made in Abyss also another one. So the Japanese do explore these types of things. I do find it a bit weird still. I'm not exactly getting used to it. So I would prefer having a show that has perhaps, you know, a bit more darker tones when it's a bit of a darker show. But obviously, maybe it would have become a lot more morbid than the show was about, because it did revolve a lot around suicides and killing people and people dying and people's reasons and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, you know, philosophical substance in this show. Now, there are some other faulties in this anime and compared to Death Note. So one of the things is that the main character, Mirai, is not exactly like most interesting character. He gets more interesting down the line, but he's definitely not as a character you exactly want to root for, or a character you fall in love with like you do with Yagami and like L, for example, or Nier. There have a lot of great characters in Death Note that people liked, Rook or others, but in this series there are good characters, but I don't think they are necessarily on the same level. Nasse was kind of nice, you know, very balancing that morbid elements on the show by being very carefree type of angel, and I kind of like that balance in some aspects. But the main character fundamentally was not like this super, you know, something that you would like absolutely love or be compelled by. He gets a bit better down the line, and then you obviously have his love interest Saki, which was not also very that interesting, and then you have Uru Kanade, which is kind of like Yagami 2.0 type of character, and probably a lot of people's favorite as well. But that's the one thing. So the characters were not exactly on the same level, and the main character was not probably very interesting, especially based on the pilot. You felt like he was an emo and a loser. Like, who wants to watch a character like that, fundamentally? So that was probably one of the draw points where people like really didn't want to continue after the first 3 initial episodes or something. Then, obviously, is the OST. Death Note had a very, very good OST. Or I wouldn't say very good, but it had like these L theme, the Death Note theme. It had a lot of these iconic tracks. It had very good opening and endings. This show does also have good OP and EDs, but the the OST as a whole, not great, or at least not rememberable. So that was not also on the same level. And also something that I already touched upon, it was the actual animation, which was not up to the par with the original Death Note, and that's because you kind of had a bit of a more obscure studio, I guess, working on it. Now, the last things I want to talk about will include some spoilers, so this is the part you want to tone out if you don't want to know anything about the story. So one thing is that what will happen, obviously, in the anime, in case you have seen it, is that there is this major twist in the middle of the anime, or a bit more after the middle, just like in Death Note, as L dies. That was the very key, story event that took place in Death Note, and then afterwards, it was like the last remaining arc. And this series is similar, where the first arc is a lot more action-oriented, fighting, and the second arc is going to be a lot more philosophical and less fighting, I guess. Now, I didn't have any problem with that. Actually, that was really good, because when you have any type of battle royale anime, it creates always the same situation where the ending is always going to be one of the two. That being, there's always only going to be one survivor, or there's going to be a survivor couple. And that's always the format that all of these battle royale types of shows follow. So it becomes very predictable towards the end of those shows, unless they do something very, very unconventional about that. And the battle royale kind of ending in the midway of Platinum End allowed it to have a less of a predictable ending. And obviously nobody predicted the ending, which I want to talk about next. And but before that, I did like the aspects about the last segment of this anime really explores atheism and God, and does God exist, and who created God, and these interesting discussions. And they have a different way. It's not necessarily approaching it from a Christian type of a way. Like, there's angels, and I don't think there was any Asian religions which had like angels as canon. So I'm always been interested at what makes people interested about the heaven and hell concept in Asia and Japan, for instance. And that's something that some people enjoy. Obviously, there's a lot of atheists in anime, and they don't even like any type of discussion or story that revolves even remotely any religion. So you can like hate religion, obviously, but you not liking it being a story element is another thing, obviously. Now let's talk about the ending, which is the train wreck. So this is my thing. So the series is like scored at 6 out of 10, and for me it probably was 8 out of 10 until the last episode, where everything basically fell apart, and we had a conclusion, which was something that was low-key alluded that could basically happen, but then the very revelation of when the god has been chosen, and the god basically decides, okay, so here's the spoiler, the god basically kills himself. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Now, that was expected that maybe happened, given to the fact that who was chosen to become god. However, this idea that the whole world ceased to exist, everybody disappeared, the planet became empty, was really weird. Not for one, the matter that, did the animals disappear as well? Or was it only the humans? Like, the anime uses considerably less amount of footage than the manga did on the last chapter's adaptation. So there were a lot of more, sequences of childs dying and starvation in Africa, and like a lot more, those types of pictures, like picturing despair, suicides, and things like that. And also some of the, segments where the people started to disappear from the earth. But the Death Note ending also was very controversial to a degree. I thought it was okay ending though. Some people, obviously, because I remember that the Death Note movies or the manga had a bit of a different ending as the anime, so they did some alternative endings, which is something that they definitely should have explored here. Obviously, the idea that, everything has been now solved and everything is good would have been kind of like a plain ending, but the fact that the god dying caused everybody to die as well was pretty absurd. It was a horrible ending, the way it's like filmed, way it was portrayed, the last dialogues that were had, like which were like, I guess, showcasing the thoughts of humanity, were pretty bad. Like some conspiracies have been said that because the series was not very popular, the manga wasn't like super popular, that the team decided like, we're gonna troll and just end it here and make up some bullshit ending. That has been theorized. I'm not sure do I believe that, given to the fact that Death Note, I don't know what how the Bakuman ending is. If I knew, I probably could answer to this a lot more in an intelligent way. But given to the ending that it was in Death Note, you could kind of expect that there would be something like a bit of a bad ending, so to speak. But the last segment here could have been like, I don't remember which philosophist said that, I think, therefore I exist. So there could have been a moment where the humans basically thought of the god again and they came back to life. So there would be like a new generation of people on the earth or something. At least like some type of a glimpse moment of hope. Like the idea that everybody else died and everything, like, okay, I'm okay with that. But you have to leave with some type of a positive note in your story. Like even like very negative types of stories kind of leave with some type of a note, But this was maybe a bit too much for my taste. And I think that most people agree, and there was being a lot of like discussions on Reddit and elsewhere regarding about this ending. And the manga and the anime did have a very similar ending to this, and I do fundamentally agree that maybe it could have had a bit more positivity to it and change it a little bit differently. I mean, could have. I'm not really with the ending that everything is not all Gucci, we have a new god and we are in peace. There could have been a bit of a tragic thing type of a thing. Maybe the main character gets hit by a car or something. It could have had like some type of a sad note to it. But this one particularly, I did not like this ending at all. I think it's one of the worst endings that I could have gone for. It has a bit of a symbolic, a message to it, but I don't think it was perfectly conveyed. And even if you really wanted to go with this, like let's say all things considered, you wanted to go with this ending, I think there could have been better ways to choose the last panels of the manga and the last shots, and maybe, it's just like the execution, the directing of that, last segment of the manga could have been done better. Seeing an empty earth with like, the anime doesn't show it, but in the manga it shows like dead streets and like, rusted buildings or something, and the earth is like totally empty. That's not exactly, what I wanted to see. But, there could have been so many different ways to execute that type of an ending, and I think that was the main focal reason here why I don't think it deserves that 8 out of 10 rating, which I would have given to it if the ending was a bit better. So instead, I think 6 out of 10 is almost, warranted, given to this massive failure of an ending, which was like executed really horribly. But I don't have anything else to add about this. Platinum End still was a very interesting anime. It's definitely, Death Note-ish type of an anime. It's not better than Death Note, obviously, but still, like, I think you can find ways to enjoy it, and maybe you can, cut the last episode in half, don't watch the last 10 minutes, and maybe you can like have a better experience of mind about it. But I felt very, very empty when I watched the ending, and I don't think that's a really good feeling, or that's not how the reader or the watcher should leave from an experience like that. That's my 2 cents, obviously. But tell me what you thought about this and in the comments, and I will be seeing you in the next review. Cheers.